Testing, testing. All right, it's simple. Let's. The goal is to finish basically all the techniques. So I don't know. I have 2 days to finish them. So wish me luck. Technique number 9: business rules analysis. Purpose: the business rules analysis is used to identify, express, validate, refine, and organize the rules that shape the day-to-day business and behavior and guide operational business decision-making. There's something that clicked. Right now I'm structuring a company, and there's something that clicked, and it was called, we've read about this multiple times. It's called the knowledge book. And the idea behind the knowledge book is that you are kind of you're stacking information, whether it's the old information, the new information. You're kind of building on top of what you're learning, and you're creating some sort of consistency, or at the very least something people can relate to and go back to. And a key element of the knowledge book is basically some form of standards, right? And it feels the business rules analysis kind of is the tool used to create those standards, because it's used to identify, express, validate, refine, and organize the rules that shape the day-to-day business. So whatever the system kind of is involved in, right? That's what they do. And business behavior and guide operational business decision making. So it's what do we do every day and how we do it, why do we do it, has to be ingrained somewhere. And kind of who does it, where they do it, and when they do it as well, right? You have the you have the ultimate 6 open-ended questions, which is who, what, why, where, how, and when. So let's go for the description. Business policies and rules guide the day-to-day operation and businesses, of the businesses and its processes. They shape operational business decision. A business policy is a directive concerned with broadly controlling, influencing, and regulating the actions of an enterprise and the people in it. At one point I got lost. Let me go back. Business policies and rules guide the day-to-day operations. صح, okay, we mentioned that in the purpose of the business and its processes. صح, the shape and operational business decisions. So far we're good. A business policy is a directive concerned with broadly controlling, influencing, or regulating the actions of an enterprise and the people in it. A policy is basically what we call a guideline. It's this is what we do, this is what we don't do, this is what we're allowed to do, this is what we're not allowed to do. And I feel a policy leads to protocol, because you kind of reflect what happened, and based on what happened, you kind of compare it to the policy that's there, and then you go to protocol and see what you do in case something happens. That's cute. None of this is human-centric, by the way. This is very void of how human beings actually are. A business rule is a specific testable directive that serves as a criterion for guiding behavior, shaping judgments, or making decisions. It's a rule. They're describing a rule, man, right? They're just using the words that they're allowed to, because we're still talking about a fucking scientific document that's about 700 pages long, right? A directive that serves as a criterion for guiding behavior, shaping judgments, or making decisions. A business rule must be practicable, needing no further interpretation for use by people. A rule basically describes exactly what needs to go on or what's going on. That's it. It cannot assume somebody. It should be more explicit than. It should be more implicit than explicit. No, explicit than implicit. Yeah. Right? Explicit is the one that explains it in detail, and implicit, it's implied, right? So it should be more explicit than implicit. Analysis of business rules involves capturing business rules from sources, expressing them clearly, validating them with stakeholders, refining them to best align with business goals, organizing them so they can be effectively managed and reused. It's something very interesting, because if you look at your day-to-day life, there are things that you do a certain kind of way and you've been doing it for so long, but they've never been questioned. And that once if you give that, I'm looking at the fucking mic. Why? If you give that attention, it's because I'm reading directly. So if you give that attention, those basically things that are repeated on a day-to-day basis, then ultimately what you get, you're practically figuring out the pattern that feeds into them, or at the very least, that observation allows you to kind of decide if it's a yes or a no to them, right? If like no, like if we keep them the way they are or not, or if we cluster them or we do them separately, it gives you a chance to play with them. And just got chills. What did I think about? I thought about Tipper. I thought of how beautiful it was. It is. How beautiful it is. Okay. To continue, bro, what the fuck? If you take those things that you do on a daily basis, you either kind of like enhance them, change them, approach them from different angles, you just do something with them. Then eventually something that needs to happen keeps coming out and about. And that kind of like is what a rule is. But let's take it a step further. It's not really the rule itself, it's the rule and like what needs to happen and also how it needs to happen, because you're probably also considering how that impacts the company and how basically our policies are designed in order for a certain kind of like something to be expressed or whatever. So I'm not focused. Anyways. Sources of business rules may be explicit. For example, documented business policies, regulations, or contracts. Oh, look, I said explicit earlier. Or tacit, for example. Tacit is a word that I researched recently. It's there are things you can't explain, and there are things you can't explain. And the things you can't explain are kind of like intuitional to you. They're intuitive to you. They give you that things that you can't explain are things that you kind of like intuitively discovered, realized they make sense, and have been applying them, but have not been able to translate it to people or explain it to people. That's what tacit basically is. And tacit is what I would consider something implicit. The only difference is something implicit is something that's a bit more lazy. Like, no, I implied it because I assumed everyone would know. Versus tacit is like, I have no idea if anyone does it the way that works, right? So undocumented stakeholder know-how, generally accepted business practices or norms of corporate culture. Business rules should be explicit, specific, clear, accessible, and single-sourced. Basic principles for business rules include basing them on standard business vocabulary, and that's basically what they're doing here. Like all they're doing is explaining what a rule for a business is, but they're using kind of like the standard of business analysis language. To enable domain subject matters experts to validate them, because like that's what we do, and I think that's the whole reductionism that started happening over the past few years, few decades. Yeah. A decade is 10, a century, few centuries, man. We're talking 300-400 years ago. And yeah, we reduced everything to like to the simplest versions of things. So expressing them separately from how they will be enforced, defining them at an atomic level and declarative format, separating them from processes they support or constrain, mapping them to decisions that rule supports or constrains. Right, like what exactly we're doing is we're kind of like, we're labeling the rule, we're explaining the rule, we're pointing out where it functions, right? Expressing them separately, because like every rule is different. We're defining them at the atomic level. We're being very, very, very detailed about them. We're separating them from processes that support or constrain. Like we're isolating them alone so that we connect them. We don't want the process to tell about the rule. We want the rule to define the process. There is a difference, by the way. And there is a difference. It's simple. Looking at the actual, looking at the business and seeing how it works and kind of like building rules around that emits a whole lot of like bad luggage. But if you're looking at the rules of why those things are happening and then enhance them, change them, or adapt them, then the flow of the business changes in order to kind of like harmonize with that. So yes. So you definitely would want to separate them first, because the last thing you want is to kind of like decide on new rules based on how the business is working, which ultimately keeps ultimately has you making more and more rules. It's like fixing the problem, because fixing the problem through adjusting the symptom. You get it? That's it. That's it. It's like, anytime I drink, I can't walk straight. So my friends bring me basically a chair that kind of like has a wheelchair, right? But like, my problem, I can't walk well simply because I'm too fucking drunk. The actual solution is not to drink that much. I'm using that as an example, my bad. Like, I haven't drank at all in a while. And ultimately maintaining them in a manner such as they can be monitored and adapted as business circumstances evolve over time. Okay? A set of rules for making an operational business decision may be expressed as a decision table or decision tree, as described in decision analysis. The number of rules in such a set can be quite large, with a high level of complexity. Don't be the corporation that does all these fucking shit, man, that does all these rules. Do not be that corporation. Anyways, business rules, what are the elements? Basically, business rules require consistent use of business terms, glossary definitions for underlying, like, I think the elements for business rules is how to document them, man. The structural connections among the concepts, reuse of existing terminology. That's a cutie. Of existing terminology from external industry associations or internal business glossaries is often advised. Sometimes definitions and structures from data dictionaries or data models can be helpful. Of course. Data modeling, why data modeling? From data dictionaries or data models can be helpful. I can't tell why they would do that. Business rules should be expressed and managed independently of any implementation technology, since they need to be available for reference by business people. In addition, they sometimes will be implemented in multiple platforms and software components, naturally, because like every business does not necessarily have like one software, right? So like the rules have to kind of like coherently be extending everywhere. There are frequent exceptions to business rules. These should be treated simply as additional business rules. Existing business rules should be challenged to ensure that they align with business goals and remain relevant, especially when new solutions emerge. Man, right? Definitional rules shape concepts and produce knowledge or information. They indicate something that is necessarily true, but they're supplementing its definition, in contrast to behavioral rules, which are about the behavior of people. Operational rules represent operational knowledge. For example, of the organization, definitional rules cannot be violated, but they can be misapplied. An example for the definition, okay, so I thought they were kind of like doing the switch between definitional rules and operational rules, but that wasn't the case. A customer must be considered a preferred customer if they place more than 10 orders per month. That's a rule, right? That's a definitional rules. Often it could be all right, whatever. How information may be derived, inferred, or calculated based on information available to the business. An inference or calculation may be the result of multiple rules, each building on something inferred or calculated from others. Sets of definitional rules are often used to make operational business decisions during some processes or some event. An example of a calculation rule is an order's local jurisdiction tax amount must be calculated as the sum of prices of all orders, taxable ordered items. Local jurisdiction tax rate amount. All right, guys, I'm sorry, but I kind of I'm completely lost. Then there's. All right, I think I'm lost because I'm trying to understand everything when the truth is these are just random examples. So I'm trying to think in tax or think in local mabarashu and trying to think what kind of restaurant or customer or company does a rule that's I don't know. I think I kind of lost myself over there. Then we have behavioral rules. Our people's rules, even behavior is automated. Behavioral rules serve to shape, govern day-to-day business activities. They do so by placing some obligation or prohibition or conduct of action, practice, or procedure, of course. You can't do this, you can't do that. Behavior rules are rules that organizations should chooses to enforce as a matter of policy, often to reduce risk or enhance productivity. This frequently make use of the information of knowledge produced by definitional rules, which are about shaping knowledge or information. Behavioral rules are intended to guide the actions of people working within the organization, or people who interact with it. They may oblige individuals to perform actions in a certain way, prevent them from carrying out actions. A lot of salespeople and human resources kind of like have that. It protects them, kind of like, it's being neutral or like responding a certain kind of way. Okay, or prescribed conditions under which something can be correctly done. It's basically like, it's like if this is happening and this is happening, then you do this. If this is happening and this is happening and this is happening, then you do it that way. Right. Yeah, we actually have a term for it. It's called attribute-based conditioning. Or at the very least, I'm applying a software engineering, basically, thing, which is attribute-based authorization to the rule sets that they're talking about right now. So an order must be placed when the building address provided by the customer does not match the address or file with the credit card provider. That's a random fucking rule. They can go fuck themselves. In contrast to definitional rules, behavior rules are rules that can be violated directly. By definition, it's always possible to violate a behavior rule, even if there are no circumstances under which the organization can be violated directly. And those are kind of like, because they're situational, I feel like, you can't really hold people accountable, specifically if something is kind of like big. So even if there are no circumstances under which the organization would approve that, despite the fact that the organization takes place precautions in its solution to prevent it. Because of this, further analysis should be conducted to determine how strictly the rules needs to be enforced. I don't know, what I imagined is a disgruntled customer yelling in the middle of the space, like, you can't follow protocol, you have to kind of, or you can't follow your normal policies, you have to do something different. What kinds of sanctions should be imposed when it's violated, blah, blah, blah. Additional responses to violation might be appropriate. Laws, rules. This is looking more like a government, by the way, not necessarily a company. Various levels of enforcements may be specified for a behavioral rule. For example, allow no violations strictly enforced, override by authorized actor. A behavior rule for which there is no active enforcement is simply a guideline that suggests preferred or optimal business behavior. That's true. All right. I think here basically they're kind of like telling you. They're laying between, like, you can do whatever the fuck you want to, don't you dare do anything different, and everything in between. And these two basically are interesting because override with authorized actor, override with explanation. Like, authorized actor is a trained agent. With explanation, you kind of are given, like, it's okay. It's in case of fire, break glass, right? Like, you don't have to go call somebody in charge to like do that. If you see a fire, fucking break glass. We're touching you. We're trusting you. And now, what about usage considerations? What are its strengths? When enforced and managed by a single enterprise-wide engine, changes to business rules can be implemented quickly. If they're consistent and all over the place. A centralized repository creates the ability to reuse business rules across an organization. Business rules provide structure to govern business behaviors. Clearly defining and managing business rules allows organizations to make changes to policy without altering processes or systems. Limitations. Organizations may produce lengthy lists of ambiguous rules. Business rules can contradict one another to produce unanticipated results. Yeah, when combined unless validated against one another, right? Because, like, if you, I don't know, the key is always clarity. And if available vocabulary is insufficiently rich, not business-friendly or poorly defined and organized, resulting business rules will be inaccurate or contradictory. The worst thing you can do is shit small. The worst thing anyone can do is assume clarity. Yeah. Anyways, I think that was a good attempt at a fucking video, man. I love you guys. Thank you.